Before we get started, I want to let you know that I have a second channel that I started recently called Bloom, where I talk about interesting stuff such as will the economy collapse because of this virus, when exactly this pandemic is going to end, why the stock market is rising when the country is in a recession, or even things such as what are the Tesla's 5 next big products, some fascinating facts about World War II, and a lot of other interesting stuff. There are already a lot of videos you can watch right now. So head to the channel by clicking in the link in the description and subscribe. 7 money truths I wish I knew sooner. Like most of you, I grew up knowing nothing about money, except that I can use it to buy what I want. The only problem was that I didn't know how to make that money. We grew up struggling financially, so my parents always had this idea that I should do my best to get a high-paying job in a respectable company to lift myself out of desperate financial position. In fact, I didn't even know what the stock market was until I was like 17 years old. And it took me some time to figure out how on earth does it works. And I learned it the hard way, where I lost money, but eventually I figured everything out. But there are certain things that I wish I just knew earlier. I wish someone would have told me all of that when I was a little teenager. I would have done a lot of things differently and saved a ton of money and time that I have wasted to figure them out. So what I'm going to do in this video is share them with you and save you a ton of money and, most importantly, time. Knowing these things will help you to get financially free much sooner than you would otherwise. Number 1. Leverage turns good deals into great deals. If someone told me back when I was just 19 years old that you could use debt to make a fortune, I would say you are an idiot. I would never ever go into debt because I grew up having such a negative opinion about debt, leave alone the interest you get charged on top of it. But it turns out that that isn't as bad as I imagined. It's actually good in some cases. Take this case for example. Let's say you want to buy a house and you have $1 million in cash. If you have a really strong credit score, you can get a 3% mortgage rate. Of course, you can spend that $1 million to buy a house, or you can get a mortgage and invest that $1 million elsewhere, like the stock market for example, and get let's say 7% annually. In the second scenario where you are using debt, you aren't just getting the house, but letting that money grow by additional 4%. This is of course a super simple example because we didn't take into account the down payments and the market fluctuations, but that's the idea in general. Every successful real estate investor has used debt in some form to be where they are today. Often, they use their first mortgage as a collateral to get the second one and rent it out and so on. Instead of saving to buy each property, you can use debt to save yourself decades worth of time. Number 2. Tax loopholes are made to be used. No one likes paying taxes, but the tax code isn't just black and white, except the income tax where it gets higher as you make more money, up to 37%. But it's filled with loopholes where you could be making millions of dollars and pay absolutely no taxes because on paper you could be showing loss. Let's say you have a $300,000 mortgage with a mortgage rate of 3%. You can deduct your mortgage interest from your rental income, which means if you make $30,000 from that house, you can be deducting $9,000 from it. Now, instead of paying taxes on $30,000, out of a sudden, you only have to pay on $21,000. That's why it's even better to get a mortgage even if you can afford to buy the property. There is also something called depreciation. Almost everything we buy depreciates over time, and tax codes usually allow you to use depreciation as an expense, although you lost nothing and further lower your income on paper and minimize taxes. Companies use this strategy all the time. If you just pick the financial statements of any company, you will realize that they always have depreciation in their income statements. You can even avoid taxes when you sell that property if you end up buying another one in return. We can talk forever about the loopholes in the tax code, but that's the idea in general. The next one is, the more money you make, the easier it gets. When you barely make ends meet, it's difficult to imagine making millions, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you work overtime, you might somehow double your income. But the truth is, wealth doesn't really work like that. Earning your first $100,000 is much more harder than making your first $1 million. Because as you make more and more money, more and more opportunities will open in front of you. Saving enough to be able to get your first mortgage might take you a few years at least, but the second one gets a lot easier. So don't be discouraged if you can't see yourself making more. Focus first on saving your first $20,000, $50,000 or $100,000, or on getting your first property. Trust me, it gets way easier down the road. Planning the first 3 is the most difficult one. Number 4. A single opportunity can make you a fortune. The average return on an investment in the market is about 6 to 10%, and the only way to build a fortune is by investing long term. But there is another way, a faster way. There is literally a shortcut in building wealth, but it's not easy. In 2008, when the market crashed, home prices fell dramatically. They were sold at a fraction of their real value, and whoever was ready for that opportunity jumped in and purchased multiple properties at a fraction of their real price, and a few years later made a fortune when home prices rose back to their real value. During crises, cash is the king, and this pandemic is proof. In March, stock prices dropped by almost 50%, and whoever was ready ended up making millions. So if you want to be ready for the next crisis, you have to save, save, and save. Number 5. Don't explain your financial goals to anyone. One of the mistakes I made back when I was a little teenager is telling people my financial goals. People start arguing with you, telling you why is that not possible, why is that not a realistic goal, and so on. That can discourage some people. The truth is, you know yourself and your situation much better than others. Keep your goals, especially financial goals, within yourself. Of course, be rational with them. But the truth is, no one really cares. People sometimes feel jealous. Sometimes they want to discourage you in some way. So just keep working in silence and let your results talk. Number 6. Always use the 80-20 rule. There are a million ways to make money, and that's not an exaggeration. Some of them are going to work for you and others won't. What you have to do is that find that one thing that makes you maximum income and then focus all of your energy on making the best out of it. Don't jump from one thing to another. Don't try to do a lot of things at the same time, which is what I did back then, and I see a lot of people repeating the same mistake. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the causes? It applies to money as well. 80% of your income comes from 20% of your work, so focus only on them. And finally, there are things that money can't buy. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you imagine that money can buy anything. That's not true. Anyone who makes a lot of money can tell you that. Money of course solves a lot of problems and makes life a lot easier, and you should strive to make a lot of money. But there are things that money can't buy, like friendship, just good time with friends, a dinner with family. While you're building your wealth, enjoy these little things along the way. Build great relationships, have fun. Money isn't gonna help you with that. And now it's your turn. What is that one thing about money you think everyone should know? What is the most important thing you have ever learned about money? Let me know in the comments below. And now it's time to give this video a thumbs up that it deserves. And if you want to learn more about money, then subscribe and turn on your notifications. What are you waiting for? Thanks for watching. and until next time.